Hello guys, it's Anders. Today we're looking at the Waves API 2500 and comparing it with the UAD API 2500. Both really similar units. Do they stack up against each other? Let's find out. Okay guys, here we are in Logic and we are going to be comparing the API 2500, 2500, 2.5K, whatever you guys want to call it. We've got the UAD version, we've got the Waves version. Just real quick before we do the audio demo, there's a couple of differences between the two. I just want to highlight those. So the UAD version has a mix control here, allowing us to do some parallel processing directly in the plugin that isn't featured on the Waves version. So it's set to 100, as the Waves version will always be set to 100 as well. Also on the UAD version, we have the HR control here, which is a feature that pops up on a lot of the UAD compression plugins, and in some cases the distortion plugins as well. It's a headroom control. The default is set here directly in the center, but we can push it up or down. Essentially what it does is it increases or reduces the dynamic range available in the plugin, allowing you to reduce it down and get more distortion quickly. Essentially is what it does, but we leave it on the default so it should match the Waves version. And then just to note, on the Waves version there's an analog on off, so we can still use the compression algorithm, but if we switch analog off it will leave it completely clean. The UAD version is a strict emulation of the hardware unit, so you're not able to disable that. So that is enabled on the Waves version. So what we have here is just a snip from a pre-mastered track, my track Tones from like 2015. It just has got some nice punchy drums. It works well with this compressor, so that's why we're using that. First, we've got 8 bars of it clean, then we've got exactly the same loop going into the UAD, and then exactly the same loop going into the API. So I'll just let that play through, and I'll let it play through twice so we can go through the clean, the UAD, the Waves version, then we'll run through those again, and then I'll just loop it so it's just comparing the UAD and the Waves versions for you. And then we'll come back and just discuss it, and we'll have a look at some of the parameters. Brilliant. So that's just a straight comparison, same settings, giving the same gain control, and they both sound really good. There is a difference between the two, but it's neither here nor there in it being particularly bad. What we'll do really quickly is I will just loop over just the 8 bars. We'll bring both in together, and just on the Waves one here, I'll introduce the gain plugin. And what we can do here is we can just invert the phase of the waves version. This will allow us to hear the difference. There might be a level difference, so I'll just balance that out using the fader as well. And we can hear any differences that are actually occurring. Yeah, so it's almost completely cancelled out there. There are some differences between the two, but it is quite minor, to be honest. Notice it's 0.5 gain difference. That could purely be the fact that there's no gauge on the API for me to see exactly where it's set, and then there's no actual number gauges on the waves to see where it's set, but it does give me a value here. So it's going to be somewhere around here, but apparently there's 0.5 difference. That could be the difference between the two plugins as well. So very minor difference. It's neither here nor there, with one being particularly bad. I did notice that waves gives a bit more punch in the low end, whereas the high end details seem to be nicer with the UAD. Just do a quick single loop between the two so we can hear that really quickly. But overall, they're both really nice sounding compressors. I think you could go with either one and they'd be quite nice. What I've done here as well is to make use of the fact that it distorts, it goes over 0, it adds some harmonics. And I wanted to make use of that. It's a real nice character of this compressor. It's only actually compressing by about 1 dB. And we've switched out to having the thrust control, which we could do a whole different video on that, to be honest, but the thrust control set here under tone on both is just set to normal. If we set it to loud, it actually gives much more of an extreme compression type, especially on drums like these. And you can see there, now that we've changed just that single parameter of the tone, we're getting a different performance from either compressor. We can start combining that with having the harder knee as well and using the old feedback. So here they're beginning to differ a little bit more, but again, neither one is particularly any worse than the other. It purely comes down to being more of a gain control with the Waves plugin, so it starts to compress a little bit harder, so we can just gain it up by the extra dB. Well, there you have it. That's a nice quick comparison of the two. What it solidifies for me is I don't need to invest in the UAD version. I already have the Waves version and it's servicing me perfectly well here. Really enjoyable to use both and be able to compare them. But when you look at the price point, the API here from Waves, I think I got for $30, whereas the API here from UAD, which is even on offer right now, would still set me back £135 and is usually in the region of 200. So I'll stick with the Waves one for now, really enjoyable. Obviously the benefit of the UAD is I can run it from my Apollo. However, they're pretty low CPU processing wise. And if I really wanted, I do have a Waves SoundGrid server and I could offset the API to that as well. All in all, both great compressors, both awesome on the 2-bus and surprisingly useful for drum and bass. I hope the video was helpful, guys. Thank you for subscribing and I will see you on the next one.